Welcome, Josef.
Thank you. 13 years ago, Steve Jobs was on a stage similar like this. I think you all probably seen one of his presentations, and this was no different. He was here to present the latest innovation from Apple back then in 2008. This was the second version of the iPhone, called iPhone 3G. And I'm not sure if you saw Todd yesterday. He was on stage and from Evolution, and he was speaking about how hard it is to predict the future. Steve Jobs was never afraid of predicting the future, and he was on stage bragging about a feature called location services, and he said that this is going to explode. 6 months later that year, two guys were out in a cold Paris night, and they had a challenge. They were struggling to find a cab to take them back to their hotel. They had their iPhone in their hand, and they were questioning to themselves, why can't I just order a cab through the use of my phone? Said and done, these two guys flew back to the US, where they were based. They started building an application that later on became the Uber app. And back in 2010, they had the first person driving or booking a cab through their app. Nowadays, the valuation of Uber is over $50 billion US, and I think Travis and Garrett are both still around. And why am I telling you this story? Well, I think it's an interesting one because what they did was essentially only improve the experience of something that was already around. People have been taking cabs going from one place to another for ages. That's nothing new. But what they did is only by improving the experience in how you book your cab, how you pay for your cab, and how you handle your receipts, they were able to build a global company now accessible across the world. And my name is Josef Darmark. I'm VP of Product at Trustly. I started my career back in 2004 when Pontus Lindvall, I'm not sure if you saw him on stage earlier today, but the Betsson CEO, suggested I move to London to set up the Betsson office in London. I did, and I stayed with Pontus and Betsson for 5 years, out of 3, which was on this lovely sunny island, Malta. But in 2010, I moved over to instead serve the gaming industry by helping operators give their players the best experiences in the cashier. And since 2015, for 7 years now, I've been with Trustly. And if you don't know Trustly, we are kind of market leaders and experts in open banking payments. In the context of gaming, that means that we do what we can to give the players the best experiences in making deposits, as well as performing payouts back to their bank account. And this has been proven to be very successful in a number of markets across Europe. And now we are available across the globe. We have a business in the US and Canada, and we do payouts and pay-ins across all of the markets in Europe. One thing we found, though, as we establish ourselves in new markets, is always that speed matters. No matter where we go, people don't seem to enjoy standing in queues waiting for their withdrawal to be accepted, or going through lengthy deposit process to make a deposit onto a gambling site. And an interesting fact is that we've been able to put a value on this in the context of gaming. So with open banking, which for those of you who don't know is the banks opening up APIs to allow third-party providers, such as Trustly, to access their services through an API. And on the back of these APIs, which has been rolled out over the last 4 years, we've been able to improve the flow for our players depositing money into different operator sites. And we took, a year ago, we did an exercise and reviewed all of the data we had for our top 10 most popular banks. And with some of these banks, we had been able to cut the deposit journey from previously being 60 seconds down to now only being 30 seconds. And what we saw is quite amazing. We could see that if we were able to cut down the processing time to 30 seconds, we increased the deposit volumes coming through those banks by 40%. That's a huge number. And if you dig further into that data, you can see that it's not because people deposit higher amounts or because the conversion of those orders are better. It's because people come back more often, and they're more frequently making deposits into the operator site using those banks. And that's how I would define loyalty. And that's how we can use open banking to drive loyalty. You can measure loyalty in different ways. I know operators use net promoter scores, essentially asking the consumer how likely it is that they would refer their or tell their friend about their experiences with this site. But you can also use more kind of hard fact-based measurements where you measure the activity time, or you measure the number of interactions you have with your players, or what type of products they use with you. I would define loyalty in this way. Essentially, it's an emotion that sits between the operator and the player. And what I think, if you accept that loyalty is about an emotion you have towards someone, or a specific brand in this case, you can connect the fact that we're able to drive loyalty through an improved player or deposit experience. Another part which is interesting on open banking is that it also allows for us to improve the merchant experience when it comes to the regulatory environment. I know regulatory perspectives were up yesterday, and I listened into Pierre on his opening speech, and he was speaking about how politicians are taking decisions for media points and essentially describing it as a threat to the industry. And even Robin Reed and Tim Heath spoke about it would be better to have one single license for the whole of Europe. If I can make a prediction here, I don't think we will have a single European license model anytime soon. Local regulation is here to stay, and I think also the remaining markets which are yet to kind of come up with a functioning regime will have that happen over the coming years. What we see, though, on the back of these local regulations is that they're still moving. Even markets such as UK, which have had a functioning local regime for the last 5-6 years, are still making adjustments to the regulation, and they're still interpreting the law. Unfortunately for the operators, it's being directed on the back of fines handed out to the operators. But it's a moving target still, and with, for example, Netherlands only becoming regulated last year and Germany earlier this year, we will probably see an environment where these laws and regulations will change over the coming years. Secondly, there is much more focus on social responsibility and affordability for your players. And in some markets, this also comes with very specific requirements. So in the UK, you cannot use credit cards to deposit funds, or in Germany, you might not be able to play your slot machines with a higher amount than €1. Or in Sweden, you need to wait 3 seconds until the next spin. But there are also now in the UK, for example, explicit discussions around how operators will or should confirm if a person can afford to play with you. And then finally, there is a lot of focus on compliance and AML measures. I will now walk you through 3 solutions that we have built at Trustly, which address both the regulatory side of the gaming industry, as well as how you're able to drive loyalty on the back of these solutions. And the first one, which you perhaps have heard about, and it's a cornerstone in our product portfolio, is our Pay and Play solution. We launched this back in 2015, and it's been a huge success in Sweden. We've also seen the uptake both in Finland and Estonia, and we just now finished the development to adjust our product to the Netherlands regime, so we're ready to launch there as well. And what we have seen on the back of the Pay and Play product is that when people come to a site, no one goes there to register. You don't even go there to log in. You come there to play. And the whole idea behind our Pay and Play product is to allow consumers to get what they're after. So what we do in our Pay and Play product is that we combine the identity of the payer with a payment from the player. So that means that operators could very much simplify the registration form, as we are able to give name, address, date of birth, and already verified data when they come back to your site. You can simplify the registration process, and you can also, if there are a returning user, simply log them in when they are making a deposit. It's a huge benefit, and we've seen a huge uptake among end consumers. And we see in these markets that people pick sites to play on based on if they offer pay and play or not. Secondly, if you add on the fact that we can do instant payouts, we're able to instantly credit players' accounts, and you are able to instantly pay money out back to the same bank account where the money come from. That in turn means that people are more likely to make additional deposits because they know they can have instant access to their winnings afterwards. The second product, which we have just finished, is our affordability product. As I mentioned, this is an area of focus for many regulators, and in the UK specifically, but also lately in Sweden, there has been hefty fines handed out to operators because they don't fulfill the regulatory requirement in how to determine if a player can afford to lose money they're losing. And how do you actually determine if someone can afford to lose £50 or £500 or £500? It's a hard one. And when I speak to operators, I hear that the typical answer is that you speak to the player, you ask them to send in documents where they prove that they have a salary, or that they have sold a house, or that they have any other type of relevant income, which means they can afford to lose the money. And I've heard horror stories about operators saying that they're losing out on 90% of the consumers or players that they contact asking about these documents. People just don't want to send in these documents, perhaps because they're sensitive, but also because the process of sending these documents in is very inconvenient. So what we have built, originally now in the UK, but also looking to expand this into more markets, is a solution where we're able to connect, again, on the back of open banking API, to the player's bank account, fetch all the transaction history, which can be used to show the operator the income and any other type of activity relevant to determine someone's affordability. And on the back of these APIs, the end user or player can typically give us this access through a simple Face ID on their mobile phone in their bank app. So the process is much more smooth for the player's perspective. There's no sensitive documents being passed around, and you can make the assessment of someone's ability to actually lose a certain amount in seconds without any type of manual intervention. And then finally, we have our Trustly Express product. We launched it earlier this year, and this is all about, again, improving the user journey, specifically for returning customers. The standard flow, if you do a bank payment, is that you come to our checkout, you select the bank, you log into the bank, which is typically a two-factor authentication, a Face ID or a code. You select which account you pay from, and then you sign the payment. And as you remember in the beginning of the speech, I said that typically takes 60 seconds. We've been able to reduce the time down to 30 seconds. But what we're able to do with Trustly Express is that we can allow returning users to already in the cashier of the merchant present them with the bank logo and the account details, and they can select that as a payment method next to their stored card details or PayPal or what other payment methods you offer. This means that in our flow, you simply go to signing the payment. And we've had customers that now process a deposit in less than 15 seconds. We had, I think, 11 seconds as our record for a specific player. And I'm not sure that will drive a 40% increase in deposit volume, but what I'm certain of is that that will drive loyalty in the sense of the consumer coming back more often and making more deposits, as the journey to go through there is super simple. So with that, I'd like to challenge you to see if you're able to find any other payment method that allows players to make a deposit in 10 or so seconds. If you find any of those methods, you need to come out and see me by the Trustly stand just outside and let me know. And of course, if you're interested to hear more about any of the products I just mentioned, we are just outside. So with that, thank you for listening.